Hello friends, this guide covers the skills that got me to Immortal top 300 ranking. They are fundamentals you learn on your way from 0 to 8k MMR. Instead of playing thousands of games to learn this intuition, you can just watch this video and become a great carry player. This is mainly for newer players that aren't familiar with what a carry actually is. The carry role, also known as position 1, is played in the safe lane. The job of a carry player is pretty self-explanatory. The player farms and carries their team. Carry is essentially the golden child out of all the roles. It has the most farm priority, hence it is also known as position 1. The primary objective of the carry is to farm as much gold and experience as possible. This means that they will often spend the early game in a farming position, trying to secure their item timings. Carry heroes start out pretty weak but get immensely stronger as the game progresses. Carries can be classified into two broad categories, those with innate farming capability and those without. Innate farming capability refers to heroes who come equipped with a farming spell by default, which usually has a fast wave clearing ability. Examples of such heroes include Templar Assassin with Refraction and Psyblades, Medusa with Split Shot, Drow Ranger with Multi-Shot, and Terrorblade with Conjure Image. These heroes focus on buying stats that enhance their innate farming capability and do not require any farming items like Maelstrom or Battle Fury. On the other hand, heroes without innate farming ability require farming items to scale better and farm efficiently. Heroes such as Anti-Mage, Phantom Assassin, Juggernaut do not have a short cooldown wave clearing ability and hence rely on items like Battle Fury or Maelstrom to farm effectively. However, in the current meta, Battle Fury carries are not as viable except for heroes like Ursa and Monkey King who can fight while farming. Heroes that buy Maelstrom are still viable as they have an earlier item timing and most of them has some form of fighting capability. The reason why Battle Fury carries are not as popular is that they take longer to come online, whereas Dota is a game that favors a higher pace. Heroes with innate farming ability have an earlier item timing and contribute to fights and objectives sooner, which is crucial in the current meta. By understanding the differences between these two categories of carries, players can make a better decision on how to approach the game and maximize their farming potential. To become a successful carry player, the first and foremost thing you need is a hero pool. It's important to keep your hero pool limited, ideally with around 3 to 5 heroes at max. The reason behind this is that the more heroes you try to play, the more time you will spend learning these heroes rather than learning the game itself. It's essential to understand the mechanics and strategies of the carry role before trying to master different heroes. When I say learning the game, I mean that you should know how to play the carry role effectively as this will be the foundation of your success. Once you have mastered the basics, learning new heroes will be much easier as your game sense will be at a higher level. You can choose whichever heroes you like, but it's advisable to have more innate farming heroes than those without that capability, as it will make it easier for you to learn the basics of the role. Learning new heroes when you have a deeper game sense will be easier. So make it simple and effective for yourself by focusing on a limited hero pool, mastering the carry role, and then gradually expanding your hero pool. When it comes to drafting your hero in a pub, picking the right hero can be a challenge due to the limited information available. As a carry, you will often have to pick your hero in the second phase, which means you only have access to the 2 heroes in your team and the 2 heroes in the opponent's team, usually supports. To make the most of this information, it's important to consider the type of support you have. If you have a melee hard support, it's generally better to pick a ranged carry, while if you have a ranged support, a melee carry may be a better choice. This creates a balance in the lane, allowing your support to tank while you make plays, or giving your support space to make plays while you take on a more aggressive role. Another important factor to consider is the enemy position 4. With information on what this hero might be, you can ensure that you don't pick a hero that is weak against them. However, it's important to remember that while drafting is important in Dota, it's not the only factor that determines a game's outcome. Don't worry too much about drafting the perfect hero. Instead, focus on playing heroes you're comfortable with and have experience playing. Even if you have a disadvantageous matchup, you can still outskill your opponent and turn the game around. Before diving into the macro parts of this guide, it's essential to approach it in a way that allows you to maximize its potential. If you genuinely want to improve, my advice is to take things gradually. Avoid getting overwhelmed by trying to focus on multiple aspects of the guide at once. With over 10 different aspects covered, trying to learn them all at the same time can make it difficult to grasp any of them properly. Instead, take things slowly and work on one aspect at a time. Once you feel comfortable and confident with that aspect of your gameplay, you can move on to the next one. This guide is sequenced in a logical learning order, and I recommend following it in the same pattern. For example, if you don't know how to farm, you won't be able to hit your item timings, which in return will make the rest of your game worse. Remember, improving in Dota is a gradual process. It takes time, practice, and patience to hone your skills and develop your game sense. By approaching this guide in a step-by-step manner, you'll be able to focus your efforts and make more meaningful progress towards becoming a better player. After the drafting phase, it's crucial to move on to the strategy phase and take a moment to think about your lane matchup as a carry. To determine your lane opponent, you should primarily focus on the enemy offlaner and position 4. If you're an experienced player, you should be able to identify which heroes belong to these positions. Once you've identified your lane matchup, the next step is to figure out which side has the advantage. To do this, you should evaluate your hero's strengths and weaknesses, as well as those of your opponent's heroes. For instance, let's say you're playing as Drow Ranger. Her vulnerability is that she has limited ways of surviving if someone jumps on her. If you're facing a hero like Doom, who cannot easily close the gap, you can use your frost arrows to harass and keep your distance, making this a favorable matchup. On the other hand, if you're against a hero like Primal Beast, who can quickly reach you, especially before you have a level in your silence ability, this is a challenging matchup, and one that you should approach with caution. Based on your assessment of the lane matchup, you should adjust your playstyle accordingly. If it's an easy matchup, you should take the front foot and play aggressively. Conversely, if it's a difficult matchup, you should adopt a more defensive approach, playing on the back foot and trying to get whatever you can out of the lane. When it comes to lane itemization, there are a few things you need to keep in mind. There are a few variations when it comes to item builds in the early game. It depends upon what kind of lane you're going to be. There are 3 types of lanes: a physical damage lane, a magical damage lane, and a mix of both. A physical damage lane will consist of constant right-click harass. A magical damage lane will consist of constant spell damage, and a mix of both will have some form of both physical and magical damage. Most carry heroes are usually agility cores nowadays. If you're in a physical damage lane, you should consider getting the Wraithband component build. The build is Quelling Blade, Slipper, Circlet, Double Branch, and a set of Tangos. And after bounty runes, you can send out the Wraithband recipe. The reason why you go for this build in a physical damage lane is because Wraithband provides you with +2 armor, which is nice against the right-click harass. If you're in a magical damage lane, you should consider going for the Magic Wand build. The build is Quelling Blade, Magic Stick, Triple Branch, and a set of Tangos. And after bounty runes, you can send out a Magic Wand recipe. This allows you to accumulate stick charges and make yourself sustainable against the constant magical harass. And you can also get raindrops. If you're in a lane with both magical and physical damage, you can go for this build: Quelling Blade, Circlet, Branch, Magic Stick, and a set of Tangos. And depending upon how the lane is going, you can either go for both Wraithband and Magic Wand, or you can just go for Magic Wand. This build allows you to sustain against both forms of damage. If you want to dive deeper into lane itemization or are confused about what to go for, you can check Dota 2 Pro Tracker and search for your hero. In order to enhance your laning phase to the next level, you need to polish your lane mechanics. These mechanics include last hitting, creep equilibrium, and creep aggroing. There's more to laning phase, but these 3 are the most crucial aspects required to have a good laning phase. Let's start off with last hitting. I would advise everyone to practice this. Even pros practice last hitting on a daily basis, because trust me, the number of times I've seen players miss free CS, including myself, is surreal. In order to get better at last hitting, there are 2 ways. One is to use the in-game last hit trainer, which can be found in the Learn tab. And the other is to go to the arcade section and search for a game called Training Polygon. Inside Training Polygon, you can find a last hit trainer. So you can just start it like this. Personally, I find this method way more effective as you're actually practicing against a sniper bot over the other one. Assuming you are interested in improving because you're actually spending time watching this guide, I would recommend to practice this for 10 minutes every day before you start playing. It's a decent warm-up and it makes you better at the game, so why not? Creep equilibrium refers to the position and balance of the opposing waves of creeps in a given lane. When the creeps meet in the middle of the lane, they will engage in combat, and if left alone, they will slowly push towards one side of the lane or the other. The goal of managing creep equilibrium is to try to keep the waves balanced so that they neither push too far towards your own tower nor too far towards the enemy tower. Maintaining creep equilibrium can provide a number of advantages. For example, if you keep the creeps closer to your own tower, you can farm more safely and potentially deny your opponent farm and experience. If the wave is near your tower, you can just run back to your tower as is nearby for protection. But if the wave is near the enemy tower, you will have to run a long way to get under your tower protection, which will result in you either losing almost all of your HP or even dying. So it is essential to maintain creep equilibrium. Players can manipulate creep equilibrium by manipulating the number of creeps on each side, blocking the creeps to slow down or speed up their movement, and by attacking or denying their own creeps at strategic moments. Effective management of creep equilibrium can give a player significant advantage in the laning phase. In order to manage creep equilibrium, you need to make sure of the following things. Not auto-attacking the enemy creeps, not dragging creep inside your tower range, and make sure whenever you have the numbers advantage, you aggro the melee creeps onto your range creep. What this does is that it kills your range creeps, which in return doesn't push the lane into the enemy, as I will show you later in a replay example. The only time you are allowed to aggro the creeps inside your tower is when you are about to get double waved. In this example, you can see a player being double waved and pressured in the tower. Too many creeps inside your tower can give the enemy an opportunity to dive you without repercussions. So in order to avoid that, aggro the first wave inside the tower before the second wave can reach and make it a double wave. Creep aggro refers to the behavior of neutral creeps and lane creeps when they are provoked to attack a hero. Creep aggroing occurs when a player commands their hero to attack an enemy that is within 500 range of the enemy creeps. This has a cooldown of 3 seconds. When a player issues an attack command on an enemy hero, the nearby enemy creeps will switch their focus to attack the hero who attacked their ally. This is called creep aggroing. There are many advantages to creep aggroing and maintaining creep equilibrium. As you can see here, we will be looking at how Watson, a rank 1 player, uses creep aggro and wave manipulation to his advantage. Here you will see that Watson aggroes the 3 melee creeps onto the range creep. The reason behind this is that since he himself is like really low HP, like you can see he's like 200 HP, and Tide is also low HP. In order for Tide to secure this range creep, he has to move towards it. Like he has to move from here to here, right? And when he does that, the Ursa can punish him, and so can the CM with the slows. And another thing is that Watson realizes that he cannot secure the range creep without getting completely bullied out of the lane by Rubik and Tide. So what he does is that he lets his CM use his Q to secure the range creep. And now what happens is that the Tide cannot come for this creep, and Watson gets a deny on this. Another thing to look at here is that Watson doesn't aggro these creeps inside the tower, like you will see here. Instead, he keeps the wave outside of the tower range. The reason behind this is that if Watson aggroes the wave inside his tower, and the Tide doesn't, his creep wave will push into the Tide. But now you can see here that the Tide has these 3 creeps standing here, and so does Watson. So what happens is that after this point, the wave stays at the same point. Imagine if he drags the 2 creeps inside his tower, then the new creeps will just like aggro towards here because they have no other target to go on, and this will make the lane harder for Watson. Another thing to look at here is look at how he keeps aggroing the creeps away from the enemy. So the reason is that if you see Watson's HP, it's like really low. So if Rubik uses lift on him and both those heroes go on him, then he can die. So what he can't do is that he can't go and secure CS of this creep or any creep near them. So what he's constantly doing is that he's aggroing the creeps away from the enemy as much as he can. Like you will see here that he aggros again. So that one thing is that the enemy cannot deny it because Tide is a melee hero, so he can't reach this creep. Similarly, Rubik is a range hero and he has a projectile. So for him to deny this creep is like really hard because the projectile will keep chasing the creep while Watson aggroed the creep at the perfect duration where he can like secure the CS. And you will see here that he completely ignores the range creep because he knows that he's gonna get punished. So this is like the example where I said that if the reason why creep equilibrium is important, that if the creep wave is here, you're kind of fucked. Like if you see Watson, he has to go away all the way back. Even though he has like 5 kills, he cannot contest this wave because he's gonna get his HP lowered completely or even die. So this is why creep equilibrium is really important. As long as the wave is near your tower, you can do the opposite to your enemy. Like you can harass them and even kill them because they have to run all the way back here, as opposed to them being here and just like running back to their tower. This is why creep equilibrium is like really important. Another example we can look at here is like, look at the wave, right? So Watson just healed, but look at how much pressure he's getting on himself, right? So the wave, where the wave is, matters a lot, right? Like he's so confused, like he doesn't know what to do right now because he's like trying to get XP or whatever he can until the pull happens. So technically he can't really contest this wave because he's constantly being bullied out. This is why, folks, mastering these 3 mechanics is like really important. If you want to become a really good player, then these 3 mechanics will make you win every single lane. The next thing we will be covering is knowing when to leave the safe lane. This aspect of the guide is essential because if not done correctly, it can delay your game by a couple of minutes, which matters a lot in the early game. Knowing when to leave your lane is complex, but much of it is determined by whether your hero has an innate farming capability or not. We've already discussed which heroes have that capability and which don't. Let's assign category A to the innate farmers and category B to the non-innate farmers. If your hero falls under category A, that means your hero is capable of farming the jungle camps really fast after a few levels and some items. Let's say that you're winning the lane. If you are playing a hero that can clear the creep wave and also farm the large and small camp every minute, then you should generally stay in the lane as long as you're able to without being contested. This basically means that you get to farm 2 waves and 2 camps every minute, reliably, which is fine in the early game. If you have the wave clear capabilities to do that, but the enemy offlaner contests you for those camps, then you can leave the lane and farm the camps in your safe lane jungle until the enemy takes your safe lane tower. That way, you get to maximize your efficiency in the jungle and lane while avoiding danger and damage from the enemy in lane. If your hero falls in category B, you won't be able to clear the creep wave and farm the camps next to your lane reliably. In this case, you should stay in the lane for as long as it's safe because you won't be able to flash farm nor sustain yourself in the jungle. Other than this, there's another thing to focus on, which is kill threat. You need to understand when the enemy offlane hero or duo has a kill threat on you. If they have certain levels or items like Meteor Hammer or some shit, then it's best to just give up the lane. The basic idea is that category A, if you're able to get the 2 side camps every minute without being contested, stay in the lane. If not, sack the lane and farm the 4 camps in your own jungle until your tower dies, and then D-push waves along with the 4 camps. Category B, stay in the lane for as long as you can, even if you aren't able to get the 2 side camps. Even if you are getting bullied constantly, don't leave the lane. You need levels and items before you can sustain yourself in the jungle. If they have kill threat on you, then yes, you dying for the tower isn't worth it. In this case, sack the lane and wait for them to take your tower, so you can farm under your tier 2. The next tech we will be covering is TP usage. This aspect is somewhat similar to leaving the lane in terms of efficiency. Bad TP usage can get you locked out of the map and, in some cases, lead to your death as well. Good TP usage can net you 700 to 1000 gold in a minute, so learning how to use your TP properly is important. Here I will be showing you 2 examples, one of a good TP and one of a bad TP. So right now, you can see that this Morphling is going to TP top. So once he does TP top, I want you to notice something. I want you to look at his net worth. So at 15 minutes, he has around 6,150 net worth. And while this all happens, we'll just like fast forward really quickly, and in the next minute or so, let's see how much this guy farms. From 15 to 16 minutes, his net worth increased by at least 800. So this is an example of a good TP. His team is fighting at mid, so he used the space to take the top tower and also farm a lot of gold. And now what we're going to see is right after this point, this player TPs back to mid lane because he feels pressured. So instead of farming all of the enemy jungle and farming his way towards this lane, he comes back here again. So this is like a bad example. Now I want you to look at his net worth again when he TPs in. So at 16.5 minutes, he has like 7,100 gold, right? And then now he just like TP'd here, so he's just like running around. And then nothing happens, his gold is not increasing. And what actually happens is that because of this TP, he got locked out of the map and then he eventually dies. So in hindsight, he actually lost gold because of this TP. So this is why a bad TP and a good TP can make or break your game. This is why TP usage matters a lot. A few protocols that you can follow when it comes to using TP are: don't TP to a tier 1 after you respawn where the enemy has an advantage. Rather, just walk to your nearby camp and save your TP. This gives you an opportunity later to TP to a place where you can farm freely. The only time you should TP to a tier 2 to farm if there is a big wave near it, if that is safe to farm, or if the ancient stack timer is close so you can stack it. Other than that, always walk to your tier 2. For example, if the timer is between 20 to 30 seconds, you don't have to TP, as you can just walk and still reach in time to stack the ancients. Whereas if the timer is like 40 seconds or something, you can TP and stack it. The basic idea is that saving TP allows you to avail more opportunities. Once you use your TP scroll, you can't have more opportunities for the next minute or so. Moving on to farming patterns, one of the most crucial aspects of farming. Without this, you won't be able to farm shit, so please focus a lot on this part. There are two types of farming patterns. One is your own jungle, and the second is a triangle farming pattern. Knowing whether to farm in your own jungle or the triangle comes down to a few things. Ask yourself, is my hero capable of flash farming ancient creeps? If you're playing a hero that doesn't have an innate farming capability, then that hero by default cannot flash farm ancients until that hero gets an item like Battle Fury or Maelstrom. To keep it simple, if your hero cannot farm ancient creeps, then you default to farming your own jungle. If your hero can farm ancients, then it comes down to a few more things. Mainly if the enemy safe lane tier 1 is dead or not. That means you won't have access to the two nearby camps, which means that if you decide to use the farming pattern in the triangle, you will only get to farm 2 camps. Whereas if you stay in your own jungle, even if your tier 1 is dead, you can farm 4 camps and also depush the lane for your team. When you can depush the lane for your team, the rest 4 of your heroes can focus on something else on the map. If you don't depush the lane, then someone else will, which will essentially make the game 3 versus 5 for your team, since you are also farming. In this case, your own jungle is better if the enemy tier 1 is dead, and you can flash farm ancients. Then you should always use the triangle farming pattern, as it allows you to farm ancients plus an additional 3 camps while also pushing in waves into the enemy continuously. The only exception to farm the triangle even if the enemy's safe lane tier 1 is alive is if the enemy is not allowing you to stay in your own jungle and is punishing you continuously. In that case, your only safe haven is to farm the triangle, then you should go for that. Here is an example of farming patterns by Watson. So now we need to like focus on a few things. So according to my analysis, if Ursa has Battle Fury, then technically he should be farming the triangle. So why isn't he doing that? So I want you to look at the timer, which is like 14 minutes and 10 seconds, which means that there's still 50 seconds before the map is going to refresh, which map refresh means that basically these 2 camps will refresh, so he needs to farm these before that time. So since he has 50 seconds, what you will see is that Watson continuously keeps farming, like he farmed this camp, this camp, this camp, and now he's moving. So it's basically his end destination is that he wants to reach the ancients area, but he also doesn't want to leave this entire jungle, which is like free resource for him. So he keeps on farming, he farms this big camp, he farms the entire jungle, and then he moves towards the triangle. So this way, he farmed so much of the map that it is insane. We shall calculate how much gold he farmed during this time. So by 15 minutes, he's already here. And he managed to farm the ancients very easily. So we should just go back a bit. Let's start at 14 minutes, where he started farming. So at 14 minutes, he's like 7950. And by the time he clears the ancients, what is his net worth? So by the time he clears ancients, he's technically farmed close to 1,000 gold. So this is why farming patterns matter a lot. So now since he's here, because he has Battle Fury, you can see that he can flash farm ancients really fast. And now he's gonna adapt to this farming pattern. where he's gonna push in the lane and then farm this and then go towards here, which I will go more over later on. Here is another example of farming pattern by Watson. So now Watson is TPing to a tier 2 at the start of a minute to farm. So according to my analysis on TP usage, this should be bad, right? Because he has a lot of time, he can just blink here and farm it. So let's see what he does here, right? So what you see here is that Watson is just like farming his own jungle because he can't farm the triangle, because obviously he's like an anti-mage who can't really clear camps like you see here. It's so hard for AM to farm, right? And we're going to be talking about the TP usage later on as well. So there's a fight going on here, they get a kill and boom. Now I want you to notice another thing, right? So since he TP'd here, he doesn't have a TP. And if you see bot lane, there's like 5 creeps and then there's like another wave that is about to reach here, which means that this is close to 500 gold that he's going to miss out on because he used his TP like that. So instead, if he blinked all the way to here, then he would have the opportunity to TP back here. Since Watson doesn't have a TP, you will see that his Snapfire, who's like position 5, I think, is going to TP the bot lane to secure that farm, which is insane, right? So this is why the TP example is important. But overall, we're discussing farming patterns here. So I just want to like keep one thing in touch, is that until AM gets a Battle Fury, he's just going to keep farming his own jungle and deep pushing this lane. Like if you see here, this is his farming pattern. He's farming his own jungle. If there's an opportunity, he goes on someone, then boom. Then he goes here and then just like deep pushes the wave for his team. Notice how since he's deep pushing this, the Snapfire didn't have to TP in to deep push this, as opposed to here, right? Snapfire TP'd here, so they lost a few users at top because it's essentially AM can't 5, Snap is not there. It's essentially 3 versus 5. So this is like a good example to think about, right? As a farmer, if you're like the only positive and productive thing you can do on the map is relieve pressure for your team, especially when you're playing a farmer who needs Battle Fury before he can do anything. So in this example, you can see that Watson is just like constantly pushing this wave out so his team can play elsewhere on the map. Now that we've discussed almost everything regarding the farming patterns, you should have a decent idea of when you want to farm the triangle and when you want to farm your own jungle. So now I'm just going to explain to you how the triangle farming pattern basically works. So the triangle farming pattern is that you should be at the triangle area at the start of the minute or at the end of the minute. So you will see here that I farmed the 2 nearby camps in this lane and now I'm just pushing in the wave, right? So now I'm going to go back here and then at the end of the minute, you can see that I stacked this camp and now I'm farming here. So either I'm here at the end of the minute or at the start of the minute, because I'm constantly going to push this lane in and then I'm going to move towards here. Right now I have Shadow Blade and I just saw like Stone farming here, so that's why I'm going to like try to kill him with the Shadow Blade usage. But since I see this, I just have to go back. But if that wasn't happening, what I would do is that I would clear these camps at the start of the minute, move towards here, farm this camp, push in a wave, farm this camp, the map refreshes, right? And then I farm these 2 camps again, push another wave, move towards here, farm this, farm Ancients, and then the map refreshes again. Essentially, that's all you have to do if you want to farm close to 700 or 800 gold a minute. That's all you need to do. You just like follow a farming pattern. And another thing that I want to point out is that when it comes to farming patterns, it's all about efficiency. Like, for example, in this farming pattern example of Watson, we discussed that his end goal is to reach the Ancients area. So what you're going to see is that he's going to move in a proper pattern when it comes to farming. Like he's gonna go from this camp to this camp, this camp to this camp, this camp to this camp, and this camp to this camp, right? He's gonna move in a proper pattern, so it's like very efficient. He's farming while he's moving. Imagine if someone farms this camp, then he farms this camp, then he farms this camp, then he farms this camp, right? He's essentially wasting 5 seconds while moving from camp to camp, while Watson is not doing that. Like you can see here, he's moving from camp to camp, which makes it very efficient, which means that the time that he would have wasted moving is not being considered because he's not wasting any time. So this is very important when it comes to farming pattern. This efficiency matters a lot. The next thing I will be assigning you are last hit goals. As a carry, it is crucial to develop a mindset that keeps you dedicated to farming in the early game. In order to do that, you need to have a last hit goal set in your mind. If you see pro players, they usually have 200 CS by the 20-minute mark. And throughout the game, you can see that they have either 10 CS per minute or more than that. This allows them to have a lot of net worth, which in return makes them have a lot of items. Dota is a simple game. If you have more items than your enemy, you will just stop them. I've seen a lot of players, especially in the lower ranks, that don't even have close to 120 CS by 20 minutes, which is really bad. If you want to climb the ranks as a carry, you need to focus on these CS goals. I'll show you an example of how much this actually matters. So this is a game of mine where this is the yellow is my performance and the blue is the performance of a divine to immortal player, right? So let's just go back to Herald, right? So let's see how much Herald players perform in terms of farming. So at 10 minutes, Heralds usually have 38 CS, and by 20 minutes, they usually have only 100. Similar to that, Guardians usually have 120 by 20 minutes, and Crusaders have 130, Archons have 140, Legends have 150, Ancients have 151, and Divine to Immortals have around 162. So look at my CS, I have 244, so I'm performing way above average. Like if you see the net worth in this game at like 20 minutes, usually it's like 10k net worth for Divine to Immortal players, but I have 15k, which means that if my net worth is 15k at 20 minutes, this means that I would have a BKB and everything, and then the game's just easy, right? I win this game in like 20 minutes because I have so much farm. So this thing actually matters a lot. Now that we've seen how this matters, the CS goals that you should follow are 60 CS by 10 minutes, 120 CS by 15 minutes, 200 CS by 20 minutes. This is the baseline. It doesn't matter what kind of hero you are playing. However, if you are playing a hero that has an innate farming ability, then you should aim for higher CS goals. In order to achieve these goals, you need to apply the things that we've discussed before this section. In the lower brackets, you'll win most of your games just by outfarming the enemy. If the players in your games have 100 CS by 20 minutes and you have 200, you are overperforming them and you will win just based off of that. The next thing we will be going over is kill threat. This section of the guide requires you to have some experience with your heroes because it is highly situational based on what kind of hero you are playing. To keep it simple, I'll use an example of Anti-Mage. This hero likes to play alone and is very mobile. The weakness of this hero is that he's really squishy and requires some items before he can actually do something. Ask yourself, what does Anti-Mage like to do? The answer you would come to is that Anti-Mage likes to farm a lot without being interrupted. The ideal game for Anti-Mage would be that the enemy team has no catch for him, so he can blink around however he wants without fear and kill everyone. So the opposite of this would be that if the enemy has catch, then he has to be cautious. For example, if the enemy has a hero like Axe, Legion Commander, or Puck, then these heroes are considered as a kill threat for Anti-Mage. You can apply the same thought process to the heroes that you play and figure out what is the kill threat for you in the game. And after that, what you have to do is play opposite to them as much as you can and be aware of the fact that they can kill you. How does one decide whether to farm or to fight? In order to understand whether you need to fight at a particular point or to farm, take a particular hero, in this case Phantom Assassin as an example, and ask yourself these. Question number 1. What is my hero good at? In this case, PA is a stealthy hero that likes to burst down heroes really fast because of her high damage, and she is also good against physical heroes because of her evasion. Question number 2. What is my hero bad at? When you think about it, if PA is good against physical damage heroes, what is she bad against? Magical damage heroes. So Magic Burst counters PA on her inability to burst down heroes. Now comes question number 3. How do I fix the weakness of my hero? We already know the weaknesses of PA, which is getting burst down by magical damage. What is an item that fixes that? When you think about it, BKB is an item that fixes that. Another way to fix that is to be stealthy and kill the magical burst hero before they can use their spells on you. But that is a rather 50-50 scenario. The easier path is to just have a BKB. Now that we have asked ourselves these questions, the answer to whether to fight or farm is simple. If the enemy has the heroes that counter the way our hero likes to play, in this case if the enemy has burst damage against PA, she can't participate in fights until she gets her BKB. In this case, PA is required to farm her BKB timing, then participate in fights. If she tries to fight before that, she will just ruin the game for herself and her teammates. If you have the items required to fight, then keep one more thing in mind, which is that before you smoke or move for a fight, make sure you have farmed most of the resources on the map. I've seen a lot of players that just move around trying to look for fights when there's so many camps available on the map to farm. Moving on to itemizing as a carry. Once you've mastered the art of farming, you need to utilize that to win games. Most of it comes down to how you itemize. In order to itemize properly, the first thing that you need to do is to have a basic idea of the default build for your hero. Default build is the usual itemization on a hero. For example, for PA, people always buy Battle Fury, Desolator, BKB, and Basher. For AM, people always buy Battle Fury, Manta, Basher, Scotty. These are the default builds. To have a better idea about this, go to Dota Pro Tracker and search for your hero, and you can figure out what the default build is for your hero. Once that is figured out, you need to ask yourself these 3 questions. I won't go deep into it as I've already made an in-depth video about itemizing as a carry, which will appear on the top right if you are interested. The 3 questions that you need to ask yourself are: question number 1, what does my hero excel at? You need to think for a second about the hero you are playing. What is the part about your hero that makes it a strong hero? Your goal in terms of itemization is to make sure your itemization allows your hero to do the stuff your hero is good at. Then comes question number 2. What stops my hero from doing what it likes to do? Now you have to think about some general things that stop your hero from excelling. Question number 3. How do I overcome all of these issues? In order to overcome the issues that disrupt the ideal game for our hero, we need to itemize in a way that progresses our game towards ideality. This thought process will help you in itemizing on any hero in any particular role as well. The next thing we will be discussing is how to transition from being a farmer to a game winner. There are certain key aspects that you need to follow that will transition you to a game winner as a carry. The first aspect is the itemization on the carry, which we've already discussed. Once you have the farm and the items, the next thing you need to learn is how to move on the map. When your hero is ready to fight, the way you want to move on the map should be correlated to the key objectives in the game, mainly Roshan and enemy safe lane tier 2. These are the 2 most important objectives once you are strong enough. Roshan allows you to close out games without throwing, and the tier 2 gives you control of the entire safe lane jungle of the enemy because of the outpost. Now that we know what objectives are important, this is where we should be aiming to play on the map. We should farm near it, we should smoke towards it, because if we have set up vision in this area and win a fight in this area, that leads us to take Roshan for free. A lot of players move around the map mindlessly without farming. They might know what objectives they want, but they will just look around for kills and a miracle that allows them to secure those objectives, which is the wrong way to approach things. What you need to do is you need to keep farming near those areas while trying to look for a fight, so in case a fight never happens, you don't stagnate on your farm. This is how you move efficiently on the map. In case some scenario leads you to take Roshan without taking enemy tier 2 towers, with the Aegis, your goal in terms of your map movement should be to close out the map for the enemy. How to do that? Focus on taking objectives with your Aegis. Take out all the outer towers one by one without trying to go high ground or making a risky play. The amount of time people throw with Aegis is insane. Move together with your team and take out all the outer towers. Once the towers are down, the enemy will lose access to their farming areas, and then your lead will increase, which will lead to more items for your team, and then you can eventually end the game. Another thing that makes a carry player great is knowing how to teamfight properly. When it comes to teamfights, target priority is the most crucial thing. How do you decide which target you want to go on? In order to know that, you need to once again ask yourselves the questions that you ask yourself in the when to fight and when to farm part, because it is correlated. Let's take PA as an example again. Question number 1. What is my hero good at? In this case, PA is a stealthy hero that likes to burst down heroes really fast because of her high damage, and she is good against physical heroes because of her vision. Question number 2. What is my hero bad at? When you think about it, if PA is good against physical damage heroes, what is she bad against? Magical damage heroes. So magic burst counters PA and her inability to burst down heroes. How do I fix the weaknesses of my hero is your third question. BKB fixes these issues for PA, right? But there is more to it when it comes to team fights. BKB has a duration of 9 seconds if it's used for the first time. So what should be your goal with the BKB usage? Ideally, your goal should be that, yeah, I want to kill all 5 heroes with the duration of my BKB, because if I don't, after my BKB, I am prone to dying from the magical burst. But it isn't possible to kill all 5 heroes within 9 seconds, so how do you prioritize who to kill? I want you to ask yourself what is the absolute ideal fight for your hero. For PA, it should be that she gets to burst 1 or 2 heroes without using BKB, so that I can have my BKB for the rest of the heroes. Ideally, as a PA, I would want to kill down the supports that usually are the reason behind the magical burst. And as a PA with Blur, I can burst them down very easily. Here is an example of a bad team fight. So as you can see here, Dire heroes are ready for a fight and they have vision. So the info that they have is that they can see Axe, who's already went in. They have Spectre here and they have like Jakiro here. So like we discussed, PA's vulnerability is that if she gets to use her BKB on the wrong target, she will just die afterwards, right? So a hero like Axe, who is really hard to burst, going on Axe is probably the worst decision you can make in this fight. The way we want to play is that, since we have the vision required, we have a good team fight, we have that thing, right? We have vision on the hero, so we can just like stall it out, go for the supports and kill them. But what happens in this fight? Let us see. So Pia doesn't go on Axe, but she goes on the Spectre Illusion, after which she gets called, her BKB is used, and then she's fighting, even though she's not dying, but as soon as her BKB ends, they just go on him, and the supports and the damage, and the PA dies. So what should have PA done instead? PA should have waited a bit till AA and Jakiro showed, because Jakiro was already showing. AA used his blast, so eventually he was going to enter the fight. PA should play from somewhere here, kill this hero, because he doesn't have any way of survival. No Force Staff, no Ghost Scepter, no Glimmer Cape. It's like a free kill. She kills A really easily because she has a lot of burst damage. This hero has no armor, no HP. It dies in like 3 seconds. And then after that, you move on and kill the Jakiro. Now 2 heroes are dead. Essentially the 5 is 3v5 with you having BKB. You won't need BKB to kill these 2 heroes. And once that is done, this fight is done and dusted. The PA can use BKB and jump on the Spectre with a shard and the fight is like over. So this is like a bad example of a team fight. So following the thought process that we've discussed before this, you can decide what is the ideal team fight for your hero. It depends, and it's like very situational from hero to hero. So I cannot go over every example for every hero, as that would make the video really long. But I hope the thought process is like helpful. Moving on to closing out games in high ground discipline. A lot of us have thrown a million games because we are just too impatient and just want the game to end. But what happens is that instead we just end up throwing the game. As you can see in this example, how badly I am throwing this game. I'm 5-0, insane amount of farms against an anti-mage, and I just threw the fucking game like doing this. So folks, if you're playing carry or whatever, don't play like this. Be disciplined, be patient, and respect the enemy. Now let's see an example of an actual pro player. What's in a rank 1 player? Let's see how these players go high ground. So they catch the Phoenix and they kill him. Now it's like 2 heroes are dead. Maybe these guys will go high ground. But what you see, look at his positioning. He's not even going high ground. As soon as the enemy team buybacks on Phoenix, they just go back. Instead of like standing there, even though they have Aegis, BKB, everything on Marcy with Unleash, they might have a chance to win a fight. But they're not leaving it on a chance, because if they throw once, the game is over. What they're doing is that they're trying to make the most risk-free play as possible. So what they're going to do is now they're going to run back to their vision and they're going to stay here. They're going to make the enemy get out of position. So as soon as this Phoenix comes out of position, they kill him. Even now, it's like 3v3 and they could go high ground, but they still won't do that, because it's like going high ground is not that ideal of a play. Because if you think about it, they're going to go high ground, they're going to hit it a couple times, enemy team is going to use fortification, they're going to waste some time, and then they'll have to go back or maybe even throw, right? Because they have no idea what kind of buybacks they have and what kind of buybacks they don't have. So they're just like running around left and right, farming camps and stuff, trying to look for more pickoffs. So here, as you can see, the enemy is going on him, and Watson's constantly protecting his teammates, and the fight goes on longer. If the same thing happens on the tier 3, these guys can't get out. But since it's happening here, they have a decent chance of winning this fight. So as you can see here, he's fighting, they go on, they end up killing the PA, and yeah, now they just like win the fight. Cop might live, but yeah, it's like whatever. They killed the cop as well. Very cool. And now it's like, okay, both cores are dead, now we should go high ground. Now they are going to go high ground. So they're hitting high ground because 2 of their cores are dead, they don't have much damage. He dives in to kill the Phoenix. As soon as he sees the buyback on PA, he uses his BKB and he runs away. Because that is discipline, that is respecting the enemy, which all of us lack. At least like most players, they just like throw the game on the high ground like it's nothing, you know? They have 25k lead, but still they are playing very disciplined. They have a lot of respect for the opponent because they understand that if we feed, we're gonna lose. And now they're still chilling again, and now they're gonna look for more pickups again. They're forcing the enemy to come outside because it's like the enemy can't come outside. They're like kind of locked in their base, so they can't really farm either. So the lead is eventually going to keep increasing, which means that they're just going to wait for the enemy to get impatient and then end the game based off of that. So you see a fight starts here. He's not going in committing fully because he doesn't have BKB. He's just like chilling, and suddenly he's moving in again, giving his teammate sidekick BKB, jumps on the PA here, kills the PA. PA doesn't have buyback, and then they kill Phoenix. Now suddenly none of their heroes have buyback. 3 heroes with no buyback, and this is their key to basically just go high ground. So the patience that they had and the respect for the enemy and the discipline, that led to them not throwing the game and eventually just winning the game off of that. After this point, the game is over because Marcy has BKB, refresher, double ults. It's like very hard. Even though you can see that PA is dead, they're still posing a lot of threat to the enemy team. And then the game just ends after this point. This is an example of a good high ground siege. So a few tips that I can give you regarding this is that if you have all the control of the map and the 5 enemy heroes are alive, or if you think that going high ground has a little bit of risk, even if it's like 10% risk of going high ground, don't go high ground. Just keep farming the rest of the map, play on the side of the enemy, basically on their jungle, on their areas where they can't come. And once they come out of their base to farm, because they are going to get impatient, they will eventually feed you and give you an opportunity to go high ground and end the game, similar to this game. So this is how you want to close out games. The last thing I will be covering in this guide is mentality. When it comes to Dota, mental game carries you further than skill does. I want you to know that as a carry player, you have the capability to solo carry your games, so dwelling on your teammates is pointless. If you're in a difficult lane, mentally prepare yourself to not focus on winning the lane, but instead focus on not losing the lane. This means that you go into the lane with the mindset that you want to get whatever you can get from this lane without feeding. If you're in a difficult game, understand that if you have developed good farming fundamentals, you can still win your games. Don't get pressured into doing stuff that you don't believe is correct. Follow the teachings in the guide religiously and you'll come out ahead in seemingly unwinnable games. Remember, flaming your teammates isn't going to make them play better. Instead, it will make the game worse. Take a break if you lose multiple games in a row. Most of the time, your brain is so tilted, it stops you from performing how you normally would. Lastly, remember to follow this guide gradually. Take things slow, work on one aspect at a time so you don't overwhelm yourself. I hope this guide was helpful. If you are interested in private coaching, you can join my Discord, linked in the description. Other than that, I have also linked my Patreon where you can find excellent investment opportunities in terms of coaching packages. If you like the content, do subscribe, as this will encourage me to make more videos like this. Do let me know in the comments if you have any feedback. Have a nice day and good luck with your games.